Relieve the actuator spring tension by activating the main stroke of the valve using the assembly tool. The assembly tool locks out the control top from the PLC so it can no longer be actuated externally. Alternatively, you can apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to connection A1 directly. Now you can remove the top hinge clamp from the body support. Deactivate the main stroke. This will lift the valve insert off the valve body. Remove the control head from the electrical cabling and the control air supply, or you can remove the top from the valve and leave air and electrical connected. Remove the complete actuator unit, including control top, from the body. During dismounting, make sure not to damage the actuator unit or the body. Finally, by removing the lower hinge clamp, you can remove the lower body cover. Remove the external feedback unit to avoid damage. If present, dismount the control top target using a 19 mm wrench to unscrew the stem. A 4 mm Allen wrench to unscrew the A2 air connection. And a 46 mm wrench to unscrew the mounting set. Apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to air connection A3 to actuate the closing sleeve. Continue with dismounting the valve disc. To secure the stem of the actuator, use a 19 mm wrench and unscrew the valve disc using the socket key and the mounting shaft. If the mounting set is left in place, you can strike the mounting shaft with a plastic hammer. Unscrew the valve disc. Remove the air from connection A3. Carefully dismount the deflector using a screwdriver with the plastic protective sleeve from the seal kit. Remove the valve disc guide with pliers and remove the spring washer. Loosen the closing sleeve using the socket key and the mounting shaft. To secure the actuator shaft, use an 8 mm diameter drift punch. Unscrew the closing sleeve. Pull the top support off of the closing sleeve. remove the feedback target. Remove the outer O-ring from the support. Next, remove the guide ring. And then the profile seal using a screwdriver. Remove the O-ring from the valve disc guide using an awl or screwdriver. Remove O-ring from the actuator shaft using an awl or screwdriver. Using an awl, remove the seated O-rings from the deflector. Using an awl, remove the seated O-rings from the closing sleeve. Make sure that the O-ring groove is not damaged. Pull the smaller O-ring off of the lower valve disc. Using an awl, remove the radial seal from its groove. Make sure that the seal groove is not damaged. Remove body cover and integrated shaft cleaning chamber. Then remove the outer O-ring and dismount the profile seal from the support ring. Remove the washer and the guide from the body cover. Remove the O-ring from the guide. And from the body cover using an awl. The product side seal kit contains all seals and guide parts. In addition, a spare parts list, a descriptive drawing, mounting lubricant, a rail for incorporating the radial seal, and a screwdriver protective sleeve to dismount the deflector are included in the kit. Begin with the closing sleeve. Lubricate the inner and outer grooves on the closing sleeve and the associated O-rings. Start with the inner O-ring. Fix the O-ring crosswise in 4 positions in the seat and press it completely into the groove. Using a clean support, ensure a uniform seat of the O-ring. Now mount the outer O-ring. Fix the O-ring crosswise in 4 positions in the seat. Using slight rolling movements, press the O-ring into the groove, using a clean table edge. Check the seat of the seal for uniform mounting. When mounting the top support, first insert the profile seal, and then the guide ring. Ensure correct mounting position of the guide ring so that it supports the profile seal and also guides the moving parts. Place the outer O-ring of the support into its seat. A little lubricant on the shaft of the closing sleeve makes it easier to slide the support on. Apply lubrication behind the sealing edge of the profile seal to increase the service life of the shaft seal. Slide the support with the profile seal at the front over the closing sleeve. Next, mount the radial seal at the valve disc. Lubricate the groove and the radial seal. Pull the radial seal over the disc. First, press the radial seal crosswise into the groove in 4 positions using the rail from the seals kit. Apply slight rolling movements to press the radial seal into its seat. Check the seat of the seal for uniform mounting. Finally, place the small O-ring at the top shaft of the disc. Mount the O-ring onto the valve disc guide. Mount both deflector O-rings. Press the seal crosswise into the groove in 4 positions. Then apply slight rolling movements to press the remainder of the seal into the groove. The body cover has an integrated shaft cleaning chamber for the lower valve disc. Insert the O-ring into the groove. Mount the O-ring into the guide and insert the guide into the body cover. Insert the washer into the body cover. Mount the profile seal and the outer O-ring into the support ring and place all on the body cover. Lubricate all exposed sliding surfaces. The final seal to be mounted is the O-ring on the actuator stem. Mount the feedback target for the external feedback unit on the actuator stem. Lubricate the thread of the stem before screwing the closing sleeve onto it. Screw the closing sleeve along with the top support on the actuator shaft until the stop. Tighten the closing sleeve using the socket key and the mounting shaft. To secure it, use an 8 mm diameter drift punch. Before inserting the valve disc guide into the closing sleeve, lubricate the O-ring. Then press the valve disc guide into the closing sleeve with the cone pointing out. Make sure to place the spring washer into the recess inside the valve disc guide. Mount the deflector on the closing sleeve by starting one side of it at an angle and then carefully snap it into the retaining groove seat using a plastic hammer or palm of hand. Lubricate the threads of the valve disc and stem before screwing the valve disc onto the stem. Screw the valve disc in until a slight resistance is felt. Then apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to connection A3 to actuate the closing sleeve. Now you can screw the valve disc on by hand slightly further. The grooves serving as anti-twist protection on the valve disc and the studs at the deflector come together automatically to ensure that the drainage holes of the deflector align with the drainage holes of the lower valve disc. Tighten the valve disc using the socket key and the mounting shaft. To secure the stem on the actuator unit, use a 19 mm wrench, or tap the mounting shaft with a plastic hammer. Air connection can now be removed. Screw the proximity switch into the support. The setup of the feedback unit is checked when the valve is mounted in the pipeline and connected to the control top. Lubricate the thread of the locking screw. Lubricate the actuator stem and the inner O-ring of the locking screw and tighten it using a 46 mm wrench. Lubricate the thread of the mounting kit stem and tighten it using a 19 mm wrench. Finally, mount the air connection A2 using a 4 mm Allen wrench. Position the mounting cylinder in a suitable vise or workbench rack. Then, prior to use, lubricate the threads of the mounting cylinder. Remove all air connections using an Allen wrench. Lubricate the stem at the actuator unit to prevent the threads from being damaged. Now place the complete actuator unit into the mounting cylinder. Screw it in by hand until the stop. Remove the mounting sleeve from the mounting cylinder. Then mount the mounting sleeve on the stem of the actuator unit and secure it using the set screw. Now you can secure the stem in the mounting cylinder by hand. Close the ball valve and apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to the air connection on the mounting cylinder. This removes the spring force from the support. Loosen the closing head support in this position with the mounting shaft and a hammer. Unscrew the closing head support. Now switch off the auxiliary air and open the ball valve. The spring force of the actuator is now completely relieved. Remove the complete assembly consisting of the closing head support, actuator shaft, and lift piston. If an external proximity switch is used, the snap ring needs to be dismounted from the actuator shaft. Pull the closing head support along with the lift piston from the actuator shaft. Now you can remove the lift piston from the actuator shaft. Then remove the compression spring. You can now remove all seals and guides using an awl and a screwdriver. Place the small spring into the actuator. Lubricate the shaft of the actuator shaft and the inner O-ring of the lift piston, and then slide the lift piston over the actuator shaft. Ensure correct mounting position. Then lubricate the closing head support prior to assembling with the actuator shaft. Ensure correct mounting position. Lubricate the remaining threads and seals. Position the pre-mounted unit consisting of the closing head support, actuator shaft, and lift piston on the actuator unit. Close the ball valve and apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to the air connection at the mounting cylinder. This decouples the spring force from the closing head support. Screw the closing head support into the actuator unit using the mounting shafts. To tighten the closing head support, use a mounting shaft and a hammer. The outer O-ring must no longer be visible. Switch off the air and open the ball valve. The spring moves the actuator back to the initial position. Unscrew the stem of the actuator from the stem of the mounting cylinder using the wrench flat. Remove the mounting sleeve by unscrewing the set screw using an Allen wrench. Then reattach the mounting sleeve for future use. Unscrew the complete actuator unit from the mounting cylinder. Finally, reattach the 3 air connections to the actuator using a size 4 Allen wrench. Prior to mounting, lubricate all guides and seals and their sliding surfaces. Insert the lower body cover into the body and secure it using the hinge clamp. Insert the complete actuator unit into the body as vertical as possible. During mounting, be careful not to damage the actuator or the valve body. Connect the control top to the electrical cabling and the control air supply. Relieve the actuator spring tension by activating the valve's main stroke using the assembly tool. The control head is now locked out from the PLC. Alternatively, you can also apply 6 bar or 87 psi air pressure to air connection A1. Fasten the top hinge clamp to the body support. Deactivate the main stroke. Remove the hood from the Intellitop 2.0 control unit. Press the keys T2 plus T3 for about 3 seconds to activate the auto-tune function. The LED display will now be lit simultaneously in green, yellow, and red. Then press the T3 key for about 1 second for mix-proof valves, and the T2 plus T3 keys for about 1 second for the PMO mix-proof valves. During the remaining procedure, the control system of the Intellitop 2.0 will automatically carry out the actuation of the solenoid valves and teach each position. Finally, check all valve stroke functions. The solenoid valve to the left of the board controls the main stroke. In the default setting, the LED display changes from green to yellow. The solenoid valve behind the board controls the pulse stroke of the bottom valve disc. In the default setting, the LED display changes from green to slow flashing green. The solenoid valve on the right, next to the board, controls the pulse stroke of the top valve disc. In the default setting, the LED display changes from green to fast flashing green.